On this Thursday night, charging up the grid. The Prime Minister's $1 trillion plan to double Canada's electricity capacity.
Electrification underpins everything.
The proposed timeline, the promise of lower energy bills, and how this could affect the environment. Sky-high expenses, how much public money was spent in the few days the Ontario government owned a private jet. Ready to fight what Alberta's Premier is planning after a judge rejected a proposed separation referendum. Plus, it's being called Britain's own Jeffrey Epstein scandal.
We need people held accountable.
The damning allegations from a group of women, including this Canadian, against a billionaire.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Against a backdrop of global trade unease, cross-border challenges and climate change, the federal government has unveiled a new national electricity strategy. The goal is to double the capacity of Canada's electricity grid, which is already under strain as demand for power soars.
As our industries expand, our economy grows, AI accelerates, electricity demand in Canada is expected to double by 2050. So we will double our grid.
Prime Minister Mark Carney acknowledges it will neither be easy nor cheap. Mackenzie Gray explains the plan and what it will take to make it happen.
It's a grand promise to make.
Canada will double its electricity generation over the course of the next 2 decades, because the path to affordability is electrification.
Mark Carney's electrification path largely based on increasing use of natural gas across the grid. A marked departure from the Trudeau-era regulations that promised to decarbonize the Canadian grid by 2050.
By far the biggest prize is reducing emissions affordably through electrification, not pursuing absolute purity in generation.
While the Liberals are promising lower electric bills, the road there is eye-wateringly expensive, an estimated $1 trillion needed by 2050. Thursday's announcement came with no cash or policy changes, just a promise for upcoming consultations that environmental groups are ready for.
It's going to allow more gas to be burned. Gas is just as polluting as coal, so this is going to make the electricity that we use dirtier, and that's going the wrong direction on climate.
Canada's grid currently uses 80% non-emitting sources, but largely operates province to province, with Canada having the capacity to share double the power with the U.S. than it can interprovincially.
In the new world that we're in, that doesn't make sense.
Increased electrification is needed, with a North American power watchdog warning of unprecedented challenges thanks to Bitcoin mining, cloud computing, and AI data centers, booming business that Carney wants in on. Alberta building data centers powered by natural gas, a part of the Ottawa-Alberta MOU, which is set for a major update.
We'll announce tomorrow an implementation agreement, which includes strengthening industrial carbon pricing.
That new industrial carbon price for Alberta, one of 2 major hurdles in getting a new oil pipeline built to the BC coast. The other, a carbon capture and storage project, Donna, which Carney says is progressing.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thank you. Plans for a new Honda electric vehicle plant in Ontario have been paused, and today they were suspended indefinitely. The Japanese automaker has reported its first annual loss in 70 years. It says its investments in the EV market have failed to pay off. And as Jillian Piper reports, a town north of Toronto is feeling the impact.
It's a crushing blow for the people of Alliston, Ontario.
It's a shame. I think there was an opportunity for so many people to get jobs.
That opportunity now gone, as Honda has halted its plan to build a $15 billion electric vehicle project that was supposed to create 1,000 new jobs. The car maker says the move won't impact the 4,200 employees producing Honda Civics and CR-Vs at the existing Alliston plant, but the town's mayor estimates 10,000 spin-off jobs are now also on pause.
We're going to continue to work. I believe as mayor that this is just a hiccup. I think we will get to the finish line.
But the finish line may be moving even further out of reach. The Prime Minister has seemingly acknowledged the suspension is part of an overhaul of Honda's business model away from EVs after the company's first ever annual loss of $2.7 billion US.
It's a disappointing decision. It's a decision that reflects the broader strategic position and financial position of that company.
This is a historic day.
The plant was part of the Trudeau government's signature industrial policy, but several EV projects he announced 2 years ago have now failed, including GM ceasing production of an electric delivery van last year. Honda's decision comes as tariffs are still hammering Canada's auto sector, and President Donald Trump has shifted policies away from EVs.
If you're going to make cars in Canada, the only way that that is profitable is that you've got the prospect of reaching American consumers.
Preserving U.S. market access is critical for Japanese automakers, who currently make about 77% of vehicles in this country.
The free trade agreement between U.S., Canada, and Mexico will be in everybody's interest.
The Prime Minister says he is ready to resume trade talks with the Trump administration, which have been stalled since October. But he says that won't happen until the U.S. wraps up its talks with China. Donna?
Okay, Jillian Piper in Ottawa, thank you. Ontario taxpayers are on the hook for nearly $200,000 in costs linked to a private jet bought by the province. Facing a backlash, Premier Doug Ford agreed to sell the jet shortly after the purchase was made public. And now documents reveal how much money was spent in the process. Colin DeMello reports.
Call it jet fuel to propel a political scandal. New documents reveal Premier Doug Ford's purchase of a private jet will cost Ontario taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars out of pocket.
This Premier was putting his hands in the pockets of the people of Ontario, taking their money for his private gravy plane jet.
Weeks after buying and then subsequently selling the jet, the Ford government released the receipts. It shows the province signed a letter of intent to buy the plane in early January. The jet then spent weeks in Montreal getting prepped for the provincial takeover before it was finally transferred to the Ontario government on April 15th for $30 million, taxes included.
Premier is going to own that luxury private jet because he's going to wear it forever. He's going to wear that decision. When people are hurting, he's buying a luxury private jet.
While the government sold the jet to Bombardier for the same amount, the documents also show $190,000 in extra charges on a specialized aviation lawyer, an aviation acquisition expert, and $139,000 on maintenance, storage, and inspection costs.
I think the Premier of this province should dip into his own pockets for a change instead of the taxpayers' pockets and pay up.
I'll take full responsibility of this. I think I should have communicated better.
The issue has harangued the government for weeks, dragging down the Progressive Conservatives' polling numbers. Ministers have avoided the cameras, and when asked about it,
the Premier has given his remarks on that.
They do everything to avoid an issue that's landed them in hot water. Colin DeMello, Global News.
Canadian Pacific Railway has been cleared of all liability in a disaster in Lac-Mégantic, Quebec, back in 2013. 47 people died when a runaway train of oil tankers derailed right in the heart of that Quebec town, sparking a huge explosion. Several parties, including the victims and their families, were trying to sue the rail company for its role in the disaster. Canada's top court refused to hear the case and did not provide reasons for the decision. CP Rail was shipping oil from North Dakota to New Brunswick at the time, but wasn't the company operating the train. A day after an Alberta judge quashed the approval of a petition that could have forced a referendum on separation, Prime Minister Mark Carney was asked his view. Carney says while he believes Canada is the best place for Alberta, referendums are a part of democracy.
If following the rules, they hold referendums, obviously we support that. That means respecting the rights of Indigenous peoples, respecting the rights of people to privacy.
The likelihood of a vote, though, is uncertain. A judge found the Alberta government failed in its duty to consult First Nations ahead of any separation vote. Alberta's premier has said she will appeal that ruling. And as Heather Yourex-West explains, the political stakes for her are high.
For many Alberta First Nations, Wednesday's court ruling was a major win.
When he told me the news, I was silent for about 30 seconds, and then I realized what a great victory it is for Albertans that don't want to separate and Canadians alike.
The decision quashing a citizens' initiative petition calling for a referendum on Alberta's separation because it violates treaty rights.
We think that there has been an error in law, which is why we're going to be appealing it, and we think it's anti-democratic.
The Alberta Premier plans to meet with her caucus in the coming days to discuss next steps, which could include calling a separation referendum themselves.
In your mind, is there any way the Premier can keep her job without putting a separation question on the ballot in October?
I think it's going to be very difficult for her to continue to have any moral authority to lead the UCP when a supermajority of her own party members favor independence.
Now is not the time to give up the fight.
The Premier was met with boos at the UCP party convention last November when speaking about her deal with Ottawa. While polling this year has consistently found support for Alberta separation across the province is a little more than 25%. Among UCP supporters, that number jumps to between 41 and 57%. And party president Rob Smith has estimated that among actual party members, that support could be as high as 85%.
Even if the provincial government bypasses the citizen initiative project and puts the question itself, it is very likely a court would shut that down.
Leaving the Premier to walk a difficult line, keeping her base happy with a cause most Albertans still reject. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
The U.S. president has heaped praise on his Chinese counterpart at a formal dinner in Beijing. The Chinese president said the two countries should be partners, not rivals. President Trump brought billionaires and business leaders with him, and though on the surface it looks friendly, the White House says trade, oil, and Iran were all on the agenda, and there's the thorny issue of Taiwan. Candice Cole reports.
After an extravagant welcome, followed by an opulent state dinner,
we had extremely positive and productive conversations and meetings today with the Chinese delegation earlier.
U.S. President Donald Trump praised Chinese President Xi Jinping and the, quote, bond of commerce and respect between the U.S. and China going back 250 years. Xi Jinping calling the tie between the U.S. and China the most important bilateral relationship that, quote, must not be messed up. Trump was joined by an entourage of tech giants and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who is currently under sanction by the Chinese government over his criticism of its human rights record. But underneath all the pomp and pageantry, a serious warning emerged from Trump's meeting with Xi Jinping regarding Taiwan. Summed up by China's foreign ministry that clashes and even conflicts could arise, jeopardizing the China-U.S. relationship if the issue of Taiwan is mishandled.
He berated President Trump about how it would cause great problems.
This as lawmakers in Washington react to Xi Jinping's threats and air out concerns over the deals Trump may pursue.
I'm concerned that he's got Jensen Huang on this trip with him, the CEO of NVIDIA, because he intends to make a chips for beans deal where we will license even more advanced AI chips in exchange for a temporary benefit like a purchase of soybeans.
Taiwan, one of the U.S.'s biggest trading partners, remains the greatest sticking point between the two countries as China refuses to recognize it as its own independent nation. Candice Cole, Global News, Washington.
Trump is hoping China's leader will use his alliance with Iran as leverage in brokering a deal to end the Iran war. There are reports Iran is now allowing some Chinese ships through the Strait of Hormuz, which remains under Tehran's control. At the same time, at a Senate hearing in Washington, the head of the U.S. Central Command claimed the war with Iran has largely been successful.
In less than 40 days, CENTCOM forces achieved our military objectives. Most notably, we degraded Iran's ability to project power outside its borders and threaten the region and threaten our interests.
The head of U.S. forces in the Middle East claims U.S. strikes have set back Iran's defense industry by 90%. He did acknowledge Iran still maintains some capabilities to threaten ships. He also says Iran can no longer provide resources to armed groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. When asked about how the U.S. could reopen the Strait of Hormuz or end the conflict entirely, Cooper said policy matters are up to the Trump administration. Cruise control. Coming up, the extra scrutiny on the industry after 2 cruise ships were locked down due to viruses this month. Dozens of Canadians who were on board that Dutch cruise ship where hantavirus was detected are still being monitored for symptoms, and health officials are working to trace others who may have come into contact with someone who was infected. At the same time, passengers on a different cruise ship have become ill with suspected norovirus, which causes gastrointestinal illness. Heidi Petrachuk reports on the impact on passengers and the industry.
We have taken a precautionary approach.
And so 26 Canadians have been told to monitor their health, identified as low-risk contacts connected to the deadly hantavirus outbreak on the MV Hondius. So far, officials say they and the 9 others self-isolating as high-risk contacts aren't showing signs of infection.
At this point, we know that if anyone becomes symptomatic, we will absolutely be offering testing to those individuals.
Nations around the world are tracking travelers who were either passengers on the expedition or on flights with positive cases from the ship. A rare strain of person-to-person hantavirus found in Argentina killed 3 people on the cruise, and a handful of passengers are hospitalized. The MV Hondius isn't the only vessel health authorities have been dealing with. Wednesday, a quarantine was lifted on 1,700 people on an Ambassador cruise vessel after a norovirus outbreak, and earlier this month, more than 100 got sick in a similar outbreak on the Caribbean Princess.
The industry is capable of responding to it and recovering from it.
As it did with COVID-19, tourism expert Lauren Sheehan says the industry will learn from what has happened.
Probably traveling after one of these outbreaks on a cruise is safer than if you were in the pre-period, because now the cruise companies are hypersensitive.
If you are not comfortable with it, honestly, don't go. Let's find something else to do. If you want to feel more protected, let's get you some insurance. It's all about the risk factor.
When asked if she would take a cruise, Canada's top doctor emphasized awareness.
It's not unique to cruises, but cruises is a setting where there is close and prolonged contact amongst passengers.
As for the MV Hondius, it's expected to arrive in Rotterdam Monday, where the remaining crew, all reported as asymptomatic, will disembark to start their quarantines. Heidi Petrachuk, Global News, Halifax.
Still ahead, the Canadian woman demanding a public inquiry into the alleged sex crimes of the former owner of Harrods. A Canadian woman is demanding a meeting with the British Prime Minister. She is a leading voice among hundreds of women who accuse the former owner of Harrods department store of sexually assaulting or trafficking them. Mohammed Al-Fayed died in 2023 before any charges were laid against him. As Redmond Shannon reports, Al-Fayed's accusers say the case is about much more than just one man.
He basically came towards me, grabbed my face and kissed me very, very aggressively, and then opened my jacket and grabbed my breasts.
Shanta Sundaresan was 25 when she says Mohammed Al-Fayed assaulted her in his private office at the top of Harrods department store in London. The former Harrods employee is one of hundreds of women who say he sexually assaulted, raped or trafficked them.
It's so important for the survivors, for all of us to get answers, because unfortunately without answers it's really hard for us to move on.
The search for answers is why the British-Canadian woman delivered a second letter to Britain's Prime Minister in just over a year, demanding a meeting with him and more.
We have written one more request for a statutory public inquiry into whether serious institutional failures allowed abuse and trafficking to continue for decades.
Sundaresan says the complicity of those around Al-Fayed and police failures allowed him to go unchecked. London's Metropolitan Police launched an investigation 2 years ago. They have interviewed 4 people on suspicion of human trafficking and assisting sexual assault.
Why do you not want to wait for the police to carry out their investigations first?
Many of us don't have any faith in any investigation that the Metropolitan Police put on.
England's police force watchdog has now interviewed 4 former officers and 1 serving officer for potential misconduct following complaints made against Al-Fayed in the past. He died in 2023 without ever being charged.
We need people held accountable in order for us to feel that some sort of justice has prevailed.
Sundaresan and more than 270 other alleged victims are part of a legal action, negotiating with the company that bought Harrods from Al-Fayed in 2010 and Al-Fayed's estate. Another group, almost as large, has applied to a compensation programme organised by
the department store. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Women's hockey at the Hammer. Next, Hamilton celebrates its new PWHL team. There it is. There is a new $1 Canadian coin created by the Royal Canadian Mint to commemorate the upcoming World Cup. The new loonie is in circulation as of today. It was designed by BC artist Glenn Green, who also designed a coin for the 2010 Vancouver Olympics. There was a celebration in Hamilton, Ontario today as the PWHL welcomed the city into the league. Let's go, Hamilton! Members of some local girls' hockey teams were there to watch as the league introduced Hamilton as its latest franchise.
This is a major moment, not only for sports in Hamilton, but for our downtown, our economy, and our entire community. For generations, this community and the Greater Golden Horseshoe have been a cornerstone of girls and women's hockey, home to perhaps the greatest concentration of girls' hockey talent in the world.
Hamilton, Las Vegas, and Detroit will all join the league next season. And the Artemis II crew got a hero's welcome at the Canadian Space Agency today. Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen told a cheering crowd that it was many of the people in that room who helped make the 10-day mission around the moon a success.
But I got to really feel it and live it. And now it makes me unapologetically proud and also kind of like, let's get after it and let's go do the next thing.
The crew, which did some training in Canada, traveled farther from the Earth than any humans ever have. And the mission commander, Reed Wiseman, reinforced what we saw while they were up there. Their diverse perspectives strengthened the mission and united people around the world. That is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Notre Dame de Lourdes, Manitoba. Thanks for watching. See you again next week. Bye-bye.